In 1947, something strange crashed in Roswell, New Mexico. Was it a weather balloon or a UFO? Today, we dive into the mystery that still fascinates the world. It all began in the summer of 1947, a time of great change and technological leaps. But did that technology come from us? On a stormy night near Roswell, New Mexico, something extraordinary happened. Rancher W. Mac Brazel heard a loud explosion echo across his property, an event he would not soon forget. The next day, he rode out to inspect his land, and what he found was unlike anything he had ever seen before. The field was littered with debris, but this was no ordinary wreckage. It was a strange, light yet incredibly strong material. Could this have been the result of a simple storm? Or was it something else? Something from beyond our world? The debris Brazel discovered was truly astonishing. He described pieces of a metallic, foil-like material that, when crumpled into a ball, would immediately flatten itself out without any creases. Think about that. We didn't have memory metal like that in 1947. He also found small I-beams with strange markings on them, symbols that resembled no known language on Earth. What kind of terrestrial craft would use materials and language that were completely alien to us? These were not the components of any known aircraft of the time. The evidence suggests we are not looking at a weather balloon or a conventional plane. We are looking at something far more advanced. The sheer strangeness of the material puzzled everyone who saw it. Major Jesse Marcel, an intelligence officer from the Roswell Army Airfield, was one of the first military personnel to handle the wreckage. He later described it as not of this Earth. He spoke of its unique properties, its indestructible nature, and the mysterious hieroglyphic-like symbols. If a high-ranking intelligence officer, someone trained to identify all manner of foreign and domestic aircraft, could not recognize these materials, what does that tell us? It tells us that he was looking at technology that was not made by human hands. The question is not if something crashed, but what. Consider the context. This happened just 2 years after the end of World War II, near a base that housed the world's only atomic bomb squadron. Is it a coincidence that a mysterious object would crash in such a sensitive and strategic location? Ancient astronaut theorists say no. Extraterrestrial visitors would undoubtedly be interested in our most powerful and dangerous technology. They would be observing us. Could it be that their surveillance craft malfunctioned during a thunderstorm and crashed? It is a distinct possibility. The location, the timing, and the nature of the debris all point to one conclusion. This was no accident of nature. The initial response from the United States military was shocking in its honesty. On July 8, 1947, the public information officer at the Roswell Army Airfield issued a press release that would electrify the world. The headline was unambiguous. The Army had captured a flying saucer. This was not a rumor or a civilian claim. This was an official statement from the very people tasked with protecting the nation's skies. Major Jesse Marcel was even photographed with some of the debris. For a brief moment, the world believed that we had made contact. The confirmation seemed to be official. But why would the military make such a bold claim if it weren't true? Then, in less than 24 hours, the story changed completely. Suddenly, the flying saucer was nothing more than a common weather balloon. Brigadier General Roger Ramey held a press conference in Fort Worth, Texas, and presented the supposed real debris. It was flimsy foil, rubber, and balsa wood sticks, the components of a standard weather balloon. He effectively silenced the story, dismissing it as a mistake made by excited personnel in the field. But does this make sense? Would highly trained officers mistake a sophisticated craft for a simple balloon? Or was this a deliberate act of disinformation designed to hide a much bigger truth? Major Marcel was ordered to pose for photographs with the weather balloon debris, a story he was forced to uphold for decades. However, years later he broke his silence. He insisted that the material he was photographed with was not what he had recovered from the crash site. He claimed the real debris, the strange, unearthly metal, was switched out before the press conference. He described it as a cover-up. Why would the government go to such lengths? Why stage a press conference and force a decorated officer to participate in a lie? The answer is simple. They had something to hide, something so important that it required an immediate and total denial. We must ask ourselves, which story is more believable? The first immediate report from the trained intelligence officers on the scene, who called it a flying saucer, or the second revised story that came from high-level generals hours later, complete with a convenient and mundane explanation. The rapid retraction and the testimony of key witnesses like Jesse Marcel suggest a classic cover-up. The weather balloon was a smokescreen, a story so simple and boring that they hoped the public would lose interest and forget, but some of us never forgot. The truth was buried, but it was not lost forever. The story of Roswell goes far beyond just strange metal debris. As researchers dug deeper over the years, a more complete and far more disturbing picture began to emerge. Multiple witnesses, many of whom were sworn to secrecy for decades, started coming forward with their stories. They didn't just talk about wreckage, they talked about a second crash site. They described a larger, more intact craft, not just scattered pieces, and even more incredibly, they talked about the recovery of bodies. These were not the bodies of human pilots. They were something else entirely. Could it be that the government didn't just recover a craft but also its occupants? One of the most compelling accounts came from Glenn Dennis, a young mortician in Roswell at the time. He claimed he received a strange call from the airbase, asking about the availability of small, child-sized caskets and how to preserve bodies that had been exposed to the elements. Later, he said a nurse he knew from the base described a frantic scene at the base hospital, where she witnessed the autopsy of small non-human beings with large heads and big dark eyes. She was terrified and warned him to never speak of it. Her testimony, along with others, paints a chilling picture of a secret medical operation to study extraterrestrial beings. The government, of course, has always denied these claims. Decades later, in the 1990s, they released official reports to finally put the matter to rest. First, they claimed the debris was from a top-secret Cold War program called Project Mogul, which used high-altitude balloons to listen for Soviet nuclear tests. This was their new explanation for the weather balloon. But what about the bodies? In a later report, they claimed these were simply crash test dummies that were dropped from high altitudes as part of aeronautical research. But there is a massive problem with this explanation. The timeline simply does not add up. The crash test dummy program the Air Force cited did not even begin until 1953, a full 6 years after the Roswell incident. How could people in 1947 have seen dummies from a program that didn't exist yet? Are we supposed to believe that all these witnesses, military officers, morticians, nurses, and local citizens, confused the dates or misremembered what they saw so profoundly? It seems far more likely that the crash test dummy story was another convenient excuse, a second layer of cover-up designed to explain away the most incredible part of the story, the recovery of alien bodies. Today, more than 3/4 of a century after that fateful summer, the Roswell incident remains the single most famous and influential UFO case in history. It has become a cornerstone of modern mythology, inspiring countless books, movies, and television shows. The city of Roswell itself has transformed into a global tourist destination, a mecca for believers and skeptics alike, all drawn to the mystery that was born in the New Mexico desert. But Roswell is more than just a pop culture phenomenon. It represents a profound and enduring question about our place in the universe. Are we alone? The events of 1947 suggest the answer is a definitive no. The official explanations have done little to dampen public curiosity. In fact, for many, the shifting stories, from flying saucer to weather balloon to Project Mogul balloon to crash test dummies, are proof of a cover-up. Each new explanation seems to create more questions than it answers. Why the secrecy? If it was just a balloon, why classify the information for decades? Why discredit decorated military officers? The persistence of the Roswell story shows a deep-seated distrust of official narratives and a powerful human desire to believe that something extraordinary is being kept from us. It fuels the idea that our governments know more than they are telling. The disagreement between official reports and witness testimony is at the heart of the ongoing debate. Experts who support the government's conclusions argue that memories fade and stories get exaggerated over time. But ufologists and researchers point to the consistency in the accounts of many unrelated witnesses who, for decades, told the same story of strange materials and non-human beings. They argue that these first-hand accounts cannot simply be dismissed. This conflict ensures that the mystery will likely never be solved to everyone's satisfaction. It remains a case of a government's word against its people's experience. Ultimately, the Roswell story endures because it speaks to one of humanity's deepest curiosities, the possibility of life beyond Earth. It is the modern-day equivalent of ancient myths about gods descending from the heavens. It forces us to confront the idea that we may not be the most advanced beings in the cosmos, Whether you believe it was a weather balloon or an extraterrestrial spaceship, the legacy of Roswell is the question it forces us to ask. As we continue to look to the stars, the incident in the New Mexico desert in 1947 serves as a constant and powerful reminder that the truth is still out there.